Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines. In this video I'm going to be taking a look at the June and July NG models releases, which have only just actually come onto the market in August. And as you can see, I have 6 of those models to review and have a look at in this video. So I'll just put the iPad on the stand. It's not the first time that NG have delayed a month or two for their releases. They've had quite a lot of production changes this year. They've moved to a new factory, so they've got, I think, maybe 2 on the go at once, which has limited the number of releases. So it's not completely unheard of for them to push an entire month's releases back, and that is what happened in this case. I've acquired 6 of the models, if we look at what I've got, you can see it's quite an interesting and diverse mix. So I'll just quickly go through each of the boxes here. So first off, this month, or should I say June, was the first month for the new TU204 mods. So I picked up both of those, the 300 Air Koryo and the 100 Cubana. As always, the boxes from NG are really high quality and look very nice. They also, back in, I think it was probably also in June, pushed out a couple of Tristars, Dragonair and a Kalita one. The Dragonair's definitely well within my collecting criteria, the Kalita one less so, so I didn't acquire that. And then we picked up a couple, I picked up a couple of the July releases. We've got this Delta Landor 757 and an Etihad A330, which is some way outside of what I would usually be acquiring, I admit. And last but very much not least, China Airlines SP. So those are the 6 models which I'm going to be taking a quick look at in this unboxing video. I'm not going to give huge reviews to any of them. There will be reviews coming for a couple at the website and also on another video here at the YouTube channel. But for the time being, we'll just have a quick look around these, get them out of their boxes and see what I think. Okay, now just before I do get the models out of the boxes, just want to say, obviously, if you like the video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Check me out at yesterdaysairlines.com and on Facebook at yesterdairlines, and likewise on Instagram at yesterdairlines. NG models are big friends of mine. I often get new sample molds from them, and I'm told that they will be sending me some new samples in September at some point. So keep an eye on all my channels for the very latest and exclusive information from NG models. But for this video, let's get into it and have a look at the aircraft. And I'll start with the Cubana Tupolev Tu-204-100 here, CUT1701. Now this is a model which I'm likely to do a detailed review of on video, so I won't spend a lot of time looking at it here. But obviously, I'm super pleased to be seeing the Tupolev Tu-204 molds get their first usage after I was able to announce those for NG back in April. So it actually hasn't been that long. It's a little bit of a shame that we haven't seen any more announced or released in the July or August announcements. Hopefully we'll see some in the September announcements. But overall, as I said at the time when I reviewed the samples, I think it's looking excellent, this mold. It's a really exciting aircraft to be produced in 400 scale, and one I was not really expecting when I opened up that package back in April. And this is an attractive and clean livery for Cubana. It's not the most exciting livery, I have to say, and probably I would have preferred maybe some Aeroflot or another Russian airline. But there's plenty of time for that, and I'm sure that NG will be releasing more TO204s in the coming months, hopefully covering some other interesting schemes, Mahan Air, China Cargo, those kind of things. So overall, it's a good start to the month. I'm quite happy with this model. To be honest, it's probably a little bit too modern for my collection, but I couldn't say no to the first TO204 release from NG. So that's a good start. As I say, I'll be reviewing it more closely in another video. Okay, model number 2 is the other TU204, this time the Series 300, which is shorter than the 100, as you can tell. Now this one's even more surprising than the TU204-100 that NG made the mold for this, because there only were 10 aircraft made, and so there's a very small number of liveries, and of course it's no surprise that Air Koryo was the first release, because the Chinese seem to have some fascination with North Korea. I guess that comes from when you prop up an entire country. But it is a reasonably attractive scheme. It is the first of the Koryo schemes. There are 3 different schemes, or 3 different versions of the schemes. And this is the first one. The second one has a wavy flag, and the third one is more substantially changed with a lowered sheet line and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, first glance at a TU204-300, and yet again, it is looking, you know, like a really nice model. If I just zoom in, you can see that NG is knocking out the park for detail on these models as per usual. Lots of interesting detail printing going on here, and especially if you look at the doors and look at the amount of detail printing at that rear door there where across the cheek line, looks really good. Stray hair got into the frame there, but looking really nice and a very attractive model. It's not completely flawless, and I'm going to cover this model again in a print review, so I will cover those points. But if we just skip over and have a look at the base of the model again, you can see that NG here do really fine work, and the models, you know, come all perfectly built, looks really good. So another really strong model. Again, Air Koryo is not really in my core collection criteria. There are other TU204-300s which I would have preferred, Vladivostok Avia, for example, or Aeroflot again, or at least the Tupolev house colours, which look kind of Aeroflot-y. And you know, those would have fit better, but I couldn't turn down again getting the very first one of these models on the new mould, especially because then I could give it a nice review. So yeah, another great addition here. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing more TU204 models being produced by NG, as I said. Obviously, there's only, I think, 11 schemes that could be produced on this mould, and Air Koryo is certainly one of the more popular schemes. So it'll be interesting to see how often it does get used, but surely they can probably whip out all 11, considering the relatively no numbers they seem to be able to produce now and then. And some of the schemes really are very attractive, so definitely will be interesting to see those schemes. Okay, now next up is the Delta Airlines 757-200 N601DL in the Ron Allen colours from 1997. This is one of a trio of models that I've got this month, which will be replacing older versions of models. In this case, there's a Gemini Jets version of the 757 in this scheme from ages ago, probably early 2000s, and this one's obviously better because the mould is much nicer and it's got new printing aerials and so on and so forth. Not to say that the old mould or the old model is bad, though as I recall it does come with a fictitious registration, the old Gemini one. But this again is a really classy 757. Lots of people don't like the Ron Allen scheme. I can't say I love it either, but it is an important historic scheme for Delta. It certainly fits well inside my collection criteria and what is an important one to own. So looking really nice, and if we move in a bit on the model so you can get a closer look, you can see that again, can't argue with the quality of the printing from NG models here. This looks photorealistic, to be honest. Really impressive, very attractive 757. And the 75 is one of my favourite airliners, and it has been wonderful to see so many nice NG model 757s, though to be honest, I'm not overly impressed by some of the choices NG have been making this year in terms of 757s. There's been way too many modern 757s and freighters for my liking. I know other people like them, but hell, it's my video, so I'll moan about it. I would much prefer to see more classic 75s like this one, which are more representative of the service history of the aircraft. I would certainly like to see some more British charter airlines and European charter airlines. Even some of the more modern Russian 757s would be nice. And then there's a whole bunch of Canadians as well. So I admit that I'm not exactly thrilled by some of the choices NG have made in this space, though I know that lots of other people are desperate to have a Raya Airways 757 or a whole selection of DHL 757s. I'm not one of those people, so I'd much rather have Airline 757s, and I'd much rather have classic ones like this lovely Delta Ron Allen scheme. And there are still a big chunk of old Gemini releases that need to be remade as well, not just new 757s, but there are still, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 different 757s I'd like to get made personally. And hopefully we'll still see 757 releases, even though there have been a lot less in recent times. Mainly because NG have just got so many other molds on the go at the moment. But this one is looking pretty good. I can't see any issues with this one. It's a really nice release in a classic scheme, and it's good to see that Delta's threatened legal action hasn't stopped NG producing Delta models, or perhaps they've had an agreement with Delta made. I'm not really sure what the situation is there, but this is a very, very nice release. So, well done. Moving to Hong Kong, and we have the Dragonair Lockheed Tristar VRHOD, and again this replaces a model which was already in my collection. I had the blue box version of this, but the NG Models Tristar is superb and is vastly better than the blue box in pretty much every single way. So you can't turn down Tristars. I found it very difficult to not buy the Connie Kalita Tristar they released, even though it's not a Tristar I'm really interested in, or one which fits my collection criteria, but certainly not going to turn down this lovely Dragonair example. So once again, if we zoom in on the model a bit, you can see that again, it's looking really nice. Now, the one thing that you will notice on this model is the belly is not natural. It is a painted on a belly colour here, which I've done previously on some of their Tristars. It still seems like they're having some issues with the natural metal finish on these Tristars. To be honest, it doesn't bother me too much. It still looks really good, and certainly if it means we wouldn't see Tristars with natural metal bellies, then I'm fine with having this painted silver version. It looks great. Otherwise, yeah, the scheme's looking nice. I can't see any major issues with this, though I admit I haven't looked in detail in comparison with other photos. It certainly knocks the old blue box out of the park. Really loving NG Tristars. They are far and away the best Tristars that have ever been made in 400 scale, and possibly the best Tristars that have ever been made in model scale. It does look a little bit here when you're looking at the model that perhaps that wing is a little bit loose here. Haven't actually tried to wiggle it, so probably not an issue, but there's a little bit of a gap there. So maybe not spectacular there on the QC, but otherwise the model is holding up really nicely, and I really love the old dragon tail here on this livery in gold. Looks really classy. Dragonair always had nice schemes, even when they went to a mainly Euro white version, and this Tristar is looking, you know, super nice. So yeah, I do think these Tristars are spectacular. Again, like the 757s, I don't think that NG produce enough of them. I would love to see more Tristars made. There's still lots to be done, and lots of really classic schemes that haven't been touched. So I would like to see more and less of the modern releases. But hey, I know I'm probably in the minority there, so it's just my opinion, and hell, it's my video, so I'm going to say my opinion. But for me, the Tristar is just a really beautiful aircraft, and so much more interesting than 787s and A330s and so on and so forth. Not that those aircraft don't have nice features, but hell, they're not a Tristar. So another great model, another great release, really, really attractive. Okay, so just as I was moaning about having A330s being released and too many A330s, I go and get an A330, and that's the next model to look at, and it's Etihad Airways in their standard scheme. And yeah, this one doesn't really fit my collection criteria, but I think it'll look awesome on my Jinlong diorama. Etihad has a really attractive scheme here. It's one of the best liveries out there, I think. Really interesting colours and patterns. And it looks really nice on this 330 as well. Unsurprisingly, NG have a really good A330 mould. This is another model which I'll probably give a review to, so I don't want to, and I haven't spent a lot of time determining whether it's really accurate, but you know, when you first look at it, if you're not looking at photos, then it looks pretty accurate to me. Can't really see any obvious concerns. And if we look in detail at the actual aircraft, once again, you know, really nice finish. Now, it's quite interesting, they've actually got quite the sparkly kind of glittery mica style livery going on here, and actually it works quite nicely, and it's not too disco glitterball as is sometimes the case when airlines attempt this kind of paint scheme. I actually think that they've done a good job, and it doesn't kind of jump out in a horrific way when you're looking at the aircraft. You have to get quite far in to start seeing the glittery bits, and it looks really nice. So Yeah, as much as A330s don't excite me like Tristars do, they're still an attractive aircraft, and this is a good mould, and it's a really nicely produced model. So I don't mind the odd modern release, and I still collect a decent amount of modern aircraft, especially Chinese, Russian, and even some others from Australasia and the UK. But as I said before, personally, I would like NG to focus more on models that other people aren't making. Etihad is an airline which is reasonably well represented, and it's the sort of thing that you can imagine Phoenix might make, or jcwings. Doesn't mean NG shouldn't make it, and it certainly does seem that NG are interested in competing very much with those aforementioned brands, but nonetheless, for me personally, I would like to see a bit more classic stuff. But if they're going to make modern stuff, then they need to continue doing a top-notch job, and this is seemingly a top-notch model. So we'll see when I do the written review whether it still stands up to scrutiny after I have compared it more accurately to the real thing. But for now, it's looking nice. Okay, so last up is obviously the China Airlines 747 SP. This is the third model, which is a replacement for an existing model in my collection. It will replace the old Gemini jets, China Airlines 747 SP, which once again isn't a bad old model, but is nonetheless an old model and does not stand up as well as this beautiful new NG models version. Obviously, I've talked many times before how good the mold is here. I know some people moan about the nose. I don't really have a problem with it. Certainly on this model, it looks excellent. And all across, you've got that kind of 2021 level of printing detail. I mean, look at the lines on the wings, look at the crispness of the printing and the quality here. And I'm sure if I skip over to the bottom again, you've got good quality printing in a lot of detail, as you always do with NG releases. So once again, this is a really beautiful SP, and if you zoom in, you can see that even at high magnification, the printing really stands up to scrutiny. So a really, really nice model, and certainly a worthy replacement for the old Gemini release, which, as I say, is still a nice model, but just not as nice as this one. So top notch. And again, much like the Tristars and 75s, the SP hasn't actually got a huge amount of usage, and when it has, they haven't necessarily always been the models that I would like. Too many private ones, for example, but you know, when they do make it, then they make really good SPs. So, you know, the kind of roundup for this month's releases kind of has that theme. You know, I really like the models that I've got here, but are they quite enough of the right type for me? Maybe not. So let's move on to the summary of the video. Okay, so that's the June and July 2021 NG models releases which I acquired. Obviously there were plenty of other releases as well, mostly modern 757s. I think there was some more 737s, and there was obviously the Cleated Tristar and a couple of others. But for me, these were the 6 that kind of fitted my criteria the most, even though I admit that perhaps 3 of them are a bit of a stretch. 3 are nice replacements for existing models. None of the models here are really disappointing me from what I'm seeing. They all are on great molds and they're all really nicely reproduced. Can't see any particularly large flaws with any of them. I will be doing a written review of the Air Koryo and the Etihad, and there will be a video review of the Cubana too. And you know, it's another strong set of releases. Now, the August releases kind of excite me a bit less. They're, again, very modern. There are no classic releases in that set at all, as I recall. Even using classic in a fairly liberal term to mean, you know, not before 2005 or something. So, you know, not as exciting, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm still going to pick up some of the more releases and see kind of what they're like, I think. But this set, it's a good start. Hope to see more TO204s in the future. Hope to see more classic Tristar 75s and SPs. And, you know, that would suit me down to the ground. But, you know, give me a shout in the comments which models you picked up from this release set and what you'd like to see in the future. Obviously, NG are always listening out for people's requests. And as I said, keep an eye on my channels, because NG have told me that In September, they will be sending me through some new mold samples. I don't know what they are. NG rarely tell me in advance, but it'll be interesting to see when they show up. So thanks very much for watching, everyone. Hope you liked your NG models from June and July's release sets, and thanks very much for watching.